Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports. Another episode that is dealing with technical difficulties. I think we finally got the sound right. But this morning we're dealing with camera issues and Murphy's Law is just kicking my ass. So yeah, we'll just kind of see what happens. If it's not one thing, it's another, right? But anyway, it's game day. So hopefully the few of you that are still tuning in, even though the start time changed, um, y'all are excited about game day, a preseason game. But so far, I wouldn't say the preseason has exactly been boring. We saw the Broncos starters play last night. I don't expect to see any starters play tonight, but if nothing else, the Twitter streets are active, so get on there, crack jokes, talk about what you're seeing, and have a good time. But before we talk a lot about the Cowboys, I do want to do a few shout outs and call outs, just because I haven't done that in a while. So we are going to get to the Cowboys in a second, but some quick shout outs and call outs. And yes, I'm in my glasses. I don't think I've ever worn glasses on this podcast before. But yeah, today my eyes were just like, you know what? You didn't get enough rest, and contacts. Yeah, we're just not feeling it today. They're like, if you try to do it, your eyes are gonna burn. So I was just like, all right, it's glasses this morning, still in my pajamas, whatever. Let's see, we already got some comments. We are down for tremendous football. Same, same. I'm so happy football is back. All right, shout outs and call outs. First call outs. RIP to the Pac-12. Okay, so if y'all haven't heard, like a bunch of teams that were part of the Pac-12 last week just like up and left. I shouldn't say they up and left, um, because a few of them at least had said like, "Hey, we're going to another conference," right? But it seemed like there were still a couple of schools that people were like, "Oh, I didn't know you were leaving." Like apparently Oregon State was really shocked about Oregon leaving. So I don't know what happened there. I read one article. As a matter of fact, I think it's this article. I'm just gonna like skim through this, y'all. This is another one of those no show notes days. So good morning, Nick. Good morning, Martin. Good morning, Botch. Good morning, R3, R16. Um, but yeah, this is a no show notes day. So I'm gonna do like we always do and just read out of this article. By the way, next week, Elena will finally be back. We will finally be back to doing shows together. And we're gonna aim for Tuesday nights consistently. I know, like an actual consistent day. That is like so new for us, right? So yeah, stay tuned for that. I still don't know what time, but it should be Tuesday nights. Anyway, so this is an article on SI.com. It says college football realignment, Pac-12 turned down ESPN offer per report. So that is some news that did come out either like last night or this morning that apparently at one point ESPN was trying to make a deal with the Pac-12 and they turned it down. So let's see what this says. Amid the latest phase of college football conference realignment, there are still questions about how exactly the Pac 12 was unable to keep its membership intact. Yeah, and now it appears some of the details behind the scenes are coming to light, including the reported offer that the league actually turned down. It was ESPN that came forward with a proposal for the Pac 12 that included the four-letter network paying the conference up to $30 million per school and included all of its media rights, including the Pac 12 network, according to West Coast Football Insider John Canzano. But the Pac 12 membership, feeling they could get more in the new marketplace, advised Commissioner George Kliavkoff, I hope I'm saying that right, sorry, George, to ask the network for $50 million per school. That's reasonable. ESPN's response to that counteroffer was goodbye. That reaction combined with what appeared to be a very lukewarm interest from Fox that included carrying some of the Pac 12's games and the final offer from Apple's streaming service that has been valued at around $25 million per school resulted in a mass exodus from the conference that followed in recent days. Colorado left for the Big 12. Oregon and Washington bolted for the Big 10, joining USC and UCLA, and the Big 12 then plucked Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. So in the Pac 12, now there are left four teams: Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State, with reports indicating that the former two, so Stanford and Cal, are getting attention from the ACC and the Big 10. So yeah, that should be interesting because I'm pretty sure the conference is going to need six schools in order to remain. Martin said the pack too. No, for real though. But I'm pretty sure they need like six schools to like still be a conference per the rules of like the NCAA. So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen there. Um, and if I'm being honest, I don't care all that much about these schools in particular, but it is an interesting story in the world of sports, just considering everything that's going on in terms of NIL and how that's affecting what people prefer to broadcast. Like, I don't think anybody, for example, expected the women's Final Four to do the numbers that it did, you know, but because it did, and because of the NIL deals that those women are getting, I'm pretty sure that's going to change what we see in terms of broadcasting for this coming college basketball season. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Speaking of college and NIL, the next shout out goes to a friend of the show. Um, Let me pull up. Her name is Alex Sinatra. Anybody who's watched our show for a long time, she was one of the first guests that we ever had on the show, and we actually talked to her about the prospect of college football. Not just football players. I think at the time it was football season, but college athletes being paid, how that would affect college athletics, so on and so forth. And so since then, she actually has started a course to teach athletes about the ins and outs of NIL and also to teach young people how to represent other athletes in their NIL deals. So yeah, she's doing some really groundbreaking stuff. And she just had an essay published in the Harvard Journal of Sports and Entertainment Law. So I haven't read the entire essay. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna read it and talk about it on the show, but it's 20 pages, and so that didn't happen. But I did read the beginning of it. So like it's an essay based on her experience. So it's not exactly like research in the sense that it was done via the scientific method, but she has had a lot of experience with talking to athletes and working with athletes about NIL. And so she's published this article, 20 pages. If you want to look into it, you can go to her Twitter is at your potential four. So everything is spelled like it sounds, except for the number four. So it's at your potential and then the number four. But yeah, 20 pages is a lot. And I do intend to read it. I just did not have time to get through all of it. But I did save it on my phone. So I'm just going to go through some of the headings for you. Um, Wait, this is actually the entire journal article. That's not what I want. I just want to read the one article. Where did that go? Okay, essay. So the essay is titled College Athletics and NIL Perspectives from a Practitioner and an Athlete. And this was written by her, Alex Sinatra, and Travion Williams. So some of the headings in here, it starts off with an intro, goes into college athletes need education and support to navigate new NIL opportunities. Facts. Part three says how to educate athletes and navigate NIL. That's valuable. Part four, part four. Let's see. So part three is really long. Part four says potential complications to NIL rights, college athletes as employees. So that should be interesting. Part five, collectives and boosters, third party support and pay for play concerns in the new NIL landscape. Part six, well, y'all kind of get the idea. Um, so I would say if you are interested in college athletics at all, even if it's like talking about the draft, for example, it might be good to understand what's happening with the NIL because there is speculation that the laws and rules surrounding the NIL deals could potentially affect whether or not students decide to declare for the draft in any sport. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, what schools do and what they don't do. There are some people who have expressed a problem with it, like Nick Saban, for example. Any interview or press conference that he's done where he talks about NIL, it's always negative, but it's not usually negative with like, here, let me give you some examples of how this is a problem. It's usually just like grumpy old man negative, like, things are changing and I don't like it. I'm Nick Saban and I want things to always benefit me. Um, but yeah, this essay actually talks about some of the real world situations that athletes are dealing with and why they are making that decision about like, okay, should I enter the draft, or is it actually more advantageous for me to stay in school? When it comes to women's basketball, seems like it might be more advantageous for them to stay in school for a while, so that'll be interesting. Um, let's see. Okay, Martin and Nick are just talking to each other. I thought y'all had questions for me. By all means, have fun in the comments. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I wanted to bring up before we get on the Cowboys. The U.S. Women's National Team World Cup, if anybody's keeping up with that, uh, yeah, the women's team got eliminated. They were up against Sweden and got eliminated. And it looks like, yeah, there's an article on Just Women's Sports about the women's national team passing the torch to the quote unquote next golden era. So that is happening apparently within the U.S. and also outside of the U.S. So for the U.S. women's national team, one of the big storylines is that Megan Rapinoe is retiring, right? Um, and so that's gonna change the team in some ways. It could be a good thing though. Sometimes teams just need to switch up the culture. And as much as people say they're open to change, the longer that you keep the old guard around, it's just not as easy, you know. Like when new people are coming in, they want to feel, like they're a part of the changes that are happening. Um, and I think whenever you start saying, like, okay, these people who've been around for a decade plus, we're going to retire, we're going to pass the torch, um, it allows those new people coming in to like really take ownership. So that could be a good thing. Also, when it comes to the women's soccer landscape, there are some new teams in contention. We've got Nigeria, South Africa, Morocco, and Jamaica. They all made it out of the group stage of the Women's World Cup for the first time. So that's exciting. It's good to see things shake up. It's good for the sport. So yeah, I'm not mad at that. I am disappointed that the U.S. women's team got eliminated, but I mean, we'll just see what happens. I'm not invested enough to like actually be upset about it, like some people are slash were. Nick said that team was old anyways. I won't call them old because I just think the way that we use the word old, it's like used a little bit too loosely. But yeah, they had some people who've been around for a while. Um, it's good to shake things up. Let's see. Nick has a question. They think athletes just want to stay in school to get paid or what? Yeah, that's what they're thinking. So a couple of football players have expressed sentiments like, well, they think if they were to get drafted, they probably get drafted low. And basically, the college lifestyle requires less of them. Because like when you're on a college campus, there are people who are like literally taking care of you. So, on top of getting these NIL deals, the lifestyle is relatively easy. So, campus life is fun. You've got, all these peers around, there's parties on the weekends. Um, and you get paid on top of that. So yeah, some people are like, yeah, maybe I don't need to hurry up and enter the draft. And then when it comes to women's basketball, the highest paid women's collegiate athletes, the ones that are making the most money in terms of NIL, they're getting paid way more than they would get paid if they were in the WNBA. Even if they got like the highest level contract that they'd be eligible for once they got drafted. And I mean, they're beating out those numbers by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so people are like, well, how are we going to get this talent in the WNBA? Because, if they're making that much money in college, not only can they wait to enter the draft, but technically they don't have to enter the draft. They're like gaining so much popularity off these brands that they might be able to leave college and do like some sort of media or entertainment gig that might also pay them more than what they get in the WNBA. So yeah, these conversations are happening. And then it's also happening in other sports, like soccer, or the lesser known sports or the lesser watched sports, I should say, things like bowling, things like track and field, where, these kids are like really popular in the town where they are, or they're popular on their campus. So they're able to get NIL deals, Whereas if they were to go pro, in some sports, you go pro, which means you can do things like international competitions or try out for like the Olympics, for example, but you actually have to invest a lot into being pro. And they're like, well, I could stay in college and save money or stay in college and keep making money. So, yeah, there's a lot of different conversations happening about NIL and its impact on people going to the pros. And that's an issue on top of things like other professional leagues popping up. So, yeah, a lot of interesting conversations are happening. I'm actually really eager to see whether or not the topic comes up whenever we start talking about the draft. But hopefully, as Cowboys fans, we won't be talking about the draft all that soon. Um, Not everyone is made to be a pro. So I bet Matt Leinart wish they had NIL when he was playing. Yo, man, even some of the people who went to the NFL and were stars wish they had NIL when they were playing. Um, so yeah, it's one of those things that's like it definitely happened way too late. College athletes should have never been classified as like amateur athletes in the first place. That was a situation where people with more resources basically took advantage of students, um, and just kind of lobbied for what they wanted to be true. When those laws were passed, there wasn't some moral high ground for it. There wasn't some actual logical reason for it. It was just schools didn't want to have certain responsibilities. They didn't want to pay a certain money for or a certain amount of money for things, and so they were just like, yeah, we're gonna push through this legislation and start making money off these kids. And yeah. Yeah, Reggie Bush. And I'm sure there are some others. I was watching the Pivot podcast interview with Micah Parsons, and I think it was Channing Crowder who he said something about when he first started getting paid to play football, and he was like, I won't say when that was, and then he was like, it was in college, and I was like, and as a matter of fact, like I went to Vanderbilt, and even I knew a few athletes, who were getting kickbacks from boosters and different forms of payments to play. And Vanderbilt isn't exactly a sports school. So it happens. Um, y'all are so wrong. So yeah, I think that's all the shout outs and call outs for now. So yeah, how about our Cowboys? A lot has happened this week, and I'm not really sure where to start. So like y'all are in the comments, y'all can tell me. Like we've got the situation with Shady and Acho, which if you follow me on Twitter, you kind of know how I feel about that, but we can talk about it. Um, we've got the interview that came out with Micah Parsons, with him on the pivot. He had a lot to say. None of it was really surprising, but I did like to hear him say it. And I really need to start saying and like editing my own videos, I hear how much I say it, and it's like now I'm like super aware of it, and it's bugging me. Um, there it goes again. Anyway, clearly we're not solving that issue today. So we've got the issue with Shady and Acho, Shady and Emmanuel Acho. We've got Micah Parsons' interview. I put out an article about why Simi Fehoko should have a roster spot on the Dallas Cowboys this morning. And we've got a preseason game coming up tonight, which is somewhat related to the article, potentially. I'm chilling with the Shady and Acho stuff. I'm over it. I kind of am too. Um, I don't think it'll be the last time something like that is an issue. And I even think that had they actually gone and watched practice, it might not have been as much of a problem. But it's just when you do the photo ops and you clearly, were given VIP access and VIP treatment, and then you go and lie about actually attending practice. I'm just like, you've been so disrespectful up to this point anyway. And now it's just like adding insult to injury. Like just go away. Go away. Nobody wants you around. Go away. I took a presentation class at work the other week and I was embarrassed about how much I said those words. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I just can't help myself. I'm gonna work on it though. I'm gonna work on it because we're trying to level up in several ways this season. So that's gonna be one of the personal things I take on. I'm going to try to stop saying and like as often as I do. I put Dak's face on them when they celebrated their numbers. Wait, when who celebrated their numbers? Oh, Acho and Shady. What numbers are they celebrating? What happened? So that's that situation. Did y'all watch the Micah Parsons interview? Have you seen it? His competitive philosophy is absolutely just, I don't know. He's from another planet when it comes to his standards. Oh, their viewership numbers. So now they got stuff to celebrate on top of all that. I'm so done with them. I'm so done with them. Um, there it is again. This should be a drinking game. It should not. So yeah, Micah's interview with the Pivot. If you watched it, he had a lot to say about what he expects from the team and what he expects from himself. So I actually wanted to grab clips of it to share with you guys and actually talk about, but yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out how to carve out time. Like the people who, this is like their job, I get why it's their job because, even if you're only on for a couple hours a day, there's just so much that goes into things like making sure you have pictures pulled up and making sure you have clips ready to share and things of that nature. And I'm just like, I'm working my job, I'm working out, I've got chores and errands to run and all that. And so then whenever it comes to like, okay, let me make sure that I have these video clips up to share, it's like that may or may not happen. Um, so if you hear about me being like, I really want this podcast to make money, that's why. It's not so much that I'm greedy or that I even necessarily want to change careers. I do like personal training, but I do wish that I had like I could trade off some of that time. Like if I could say, okay, I can drop 2 or 3 clients from my week and instead I can focus on this and make sure that we're ready to, have a really good show. Like I would be happy. Um, I like how he said DeMarcus wanted to start playing right and was asking him about it. Um, yeah, that was really interesting. Just him talking about the impact that he's had on the team. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of having someone like Micah Parsons on your team. Like, yes, he's a force. Yes, he's dominant in his own right. But when that person has a type of attitude that's infectious, then the benefits are multiplied. Um, I had a teammate that I considered to be somewhat like Micah Parsons in the sense that when they were on the track, people were scared, legitimately scared. It's like when we would release our roster for a tournament or for a game, people would look for this person's name, but she wasn't very vocal. So when it came to trying to get other people to adopt her attitude towards training and towards competition, it wasn't as effective. Vach says, I need a will still. I do need a will still. You're very lucky that you have a will. I do not. I like after trying to do this and it works out sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes I try to go live and my camera's like, no, fuck you. Or the mic is like, no, we're just not going to work today. I'm just like, I'm convinced that the sentiment, like where there's a will, there's a way, like must be absolutely true. Because y'all are on it when it comes to presentation. But yeah, so I was saying like, I've seen what it looks like when you have that one athlete on the team and they're dominant and people are scared of them, but then, people don't necessarily adopt their attitude. They don't challenge people to adopt their attitude, right? And so you end up with like this one player who makes a difference, but everybody else kind of plateaus after a certain point. And so I think the fact that Micah can not only, have dominant performances himself, but actually influence the rest of the defense to step their game up in various ways, or the rest of the team actually to step their game up in various ways. I think that's significant. That's magnificent. That's amazing. I'm trying to think of some of the other quotes that I really liked from him. Um, I saw a couple of people having a conversation about, should he, stop talking about the Super Bowl? And I don't think so. But y'all know my stance on that. I think if that's the goal, then make it the goal. I think the more people are upfront about the fact that that's what they want, the more that they're on the same page, that affects the way a team performs as well. So I'm like, yeah, by all means, say it all like all day, every day. Because it's not like he's saying, okay, the Cowboys are definitely gonna win a Super Bowl this year. He's saying, that's our goal, that's what we're aiming for. And I don't think any fans expect anything less. Martin says I love his confidence. I do too. I wrote a short article about the interview and I said, if Dak Prescott has resolve, then Micah Parsons has absolute conviction. You got to speak that shit into existence. I agree. I think once you're on a team and you start saying it out loud, it would be kind of like with this podcast if I had goals for it. Like with me and S Pain, how I told y'all earlier, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna try to start doing Tuesday nights consistently. Like, what if I thought that to myself and I just never said it out loud? Like, if I just never told her that was the plan, and she was just like, yo, why are you upset whenever I can't make a show, or why are you upset when I try to change the date like we always do? And I just never explained like, hey, I have a new plan for how I want things to go this year. Like, it's a lot harder to get everybody on the same page, but when everybody's just upfront, like, yes, we are trying to make a Super Bowl run. um I think it's important for people to be on the same page in that sense. Same as Dak. Yeah, it becomes infections. I like I'm almost happier about the fact that Dak has been upfront about that than that Micah has, because I feel like we're used to Micah being very forward about what his goals are, and being very vocal about the fact that he expects eliteness, and the fact that he expects excellence. But I feel like we're seeing a new level of boldness from Dak. But I feel like that new level of boldness is definitely necessary. I'm trying to think if there was anything else from that interview. This is what happens when you don't have show notes, guys. So I know one thing that I did find interesting, this isn't what I was gonna say, and the reason why I keep looking to the right is because my TV is on and I'm looking at a replay of the Cincinnati and Green Bay game that happened yesterday. Um, But yeah, one thing that I did find interesting was that when Micah started talking about how, oh, at a certain age, I'm gonna hang it up. I'm not playing football anymore, and I want to move on and be great at other things. And Ryan Clark, he almost got out of interview mode for a second and was like, "Young man, let me tell you why that's a bad idea." Like, he didn't say it in those words, but he basically was like, nothing else is going to pay you the way you'll get paid for doing this. And yeah, you want to be great at other things, but this is what you're best at. Don't cut yourself short, you know. And I thought that was interesting, the way you could just tell like Ryan, as the old head of the group, was just like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but let me not pass up this opportunity to give you some real world advice. Also, Dak talking shit and having some swag is good. Like, he's been so well behaved and saying all the right things. I need a QB to have the confidence of leadership. So here's my thing about Dak. I don't think that's new. I think it's new to us. And if you've been paying attention, like, it's not even totally new to us. We've seen it, but I think we haven't seen it consistently. But like, we saw it in Hard Knocks, we saw it in the infamous "I'm a big motherfucker" clip. So we've seen it and we know it's there, but we just don't often get to see it in practice scenarios, or see it on a regular basis, or have it be talked about. But I don't doubt that that part of him exists consistently. I don't think that part is new, but him speaking the way that he's been speaking in the media is definitely new. And I don't know if I've ever said it on this show, but I think I mentioned it in a Twitter space at least. But I was at training camp and I met a fan in VIP, and she's a fan that's been going to training camp in the VIP section for like years consecutively. And we're watching the offense do drills, and she turns to me and she's talking about Schottenheimer. She turns to me and she's like, "Oh, he's different." And I was like, "What do you mean he's different?" She's like, "He's different. The way he's handling that practice, he's different." And I was like, "Different from what?" And she's like, "Different from Kellen." And I was like, "Oh, well, what's he doing different?" And she's like, just what he's talking to him, giving him feedback, yelling at him, barking at him, getting in their face when they mess up, making sure that they get things done right, making them do things over. Like, he's actually out here vocal. And to me, I'm just like, that's what a coach is supposed to do. Like, even I with my roller derby team, I'm like, yeah, if a group did a drill wrong or they did it poorly, I'd be like, go back to the line, we're doing it again. So I was like, well, what did Kellen do? And she was like, well, nothing. He would tell them what they were about to do, but once they started doing it, he didn't really have very much to say. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that explains a lot. So I do think when Dak talks about how Schottenheimer is the best, as he said at the end of that pivot episode, I think that's part of it. I think there's you know, there's what comes from him internally as a leader, but then I think there's a certain aspect of the team culture that is influenced by the coaches and the staff members that are around. And it sounds like Dak really appreciates having somebody who has a little bit more energy, a little bit more assertiveness. Kellen needed to get out of Dallas. He did, and not even just because of the fact that he wasn't calling plays very well based on the talent that we have on the team. Kellen didn't have a lot of experience. He was a backup quarterback, and then they just made him a quarterback coach, and then they just made him an OC. And so it's like, okay, if you actually do want to be an offensive coordinator in this league, if you want to one day be a head coach in this league, which I'm assuming because he did head coach interviews, I'm like, at some point, yeah, you need to actually like build up your resume, you know? I've never seen an NFL offensive coordinator with a resume as bare as Kellen Moore's. Like it was crazy. So yeah, he absolutely needed to get out of Dallas, if for no other reason but his own professional development. Like the way he became OC made zero sense. Cowboys with their Boise State players, I don't know anything about that. Um, Anything else from Mega's interview? Y'all can throw something up in the comments if there's anything else that y'all want to hear about. I really need to figure out how to like get music to like play in the background. I know how to do it. I'm just not really good at adjusting the volume, and I'm with a number of things that I have to figure out. Seems like every time I go live, I'm like the last thing I want is one more thing. But I just feel like during conversations like this, it would be really cool to have music in the background. So when I stop to read y'all's comments, it's not just like silent. um, well, yeah, I'm gonna say this. If y'all think of anything from Micah's interview, feel free to just throw it in the comments. You know how we do. I don't mind circling back to a different topic. Real quick before we start talking about the Cowboys preseason, did anybody watch the Broncos game last night? That was madness. So, fun fact, I was doing a lot yesterday. I had two articles to write, and in the midst of all that, I had phone calls to make and chores to do. So when I finished the Semi Fehoko article, because I finished it yesterday, even though it didn't come out till this morning, when I finished it, I was kind of tired. So I went and like I laid down and I was watching NFL Network on my laptop, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, it was in the middle of the first quarter of the Broncos game, and I remembered people saying that the Broncos starters were gonna play, but when I woke up, I didn't even realize it was the Broncos starters on the field because they just looked so out of sorts, so out of sync. It's like they had no cohesion whatsoever. And then I kind of like, as I woke up a little bit more, I'm like, oh, that is Russell Wilson. I'm like, did they put him behind the second string O line? Like, oh, no, those are their starters. And they look like they forgot how to do their jobs. Um, Broncos O line some lawn chairs. Oh my God. Like their tackles were getting stood up like blind dates. Like it was so bad. I was like, do they still secretly hate him for something he said last season? Because they are letting him get assaulted out there. I was like, why didn't we hear about this? Like, was nobody at Broncos camp to report on like how terrible this is looking? Because I've heard about Dak Prescott's picks. I've heard about issues with the Cowboys O line, but I feel like nothing we've seen from the Cowboys O line was quite as bad as that. Like they just there was one play where it was just like one guy, nobody touched him. Nobody touched him. I'm gonna start saying dudes who don't get touched like they got ghosted because there was no contact. Um, but yeah, but it was funny because like he was a rookie, and so after the play, he's all like flexing in front of the camera, like yeah, and I'm like, man, these Arizona rookies are really gonna be feeling themselves tomorrow, and they just really nobody touched you. Like, by all means have fun, but like you didn't actually do anything. You just faced no resistance. Cardinals Twitter had a field day. I only saw that one tweet that they made with the with the chick on the plane. That's the only one that I saw. I didn't see anything else. And people are like, "Dang, calm down. It's the first preseason game." And I'm just like, "Yo, it's funny. It's funny. It's funny, and this is timely. Like, let them have fun. Like, we don't know if they're gonna have more opportunities this season to even make those kind of jokes. So I'm like, by all means, do you." Um, but yeah, that was interesting to watch. That was very interesting to watch. Uh, but yeah, it seemed like they got it together before halftime, and they started to figure it out. I don't know what changed. I've heard that Sean Payton has a way of like talking to people in a way that makes you feel like, okay, I better get my shit together. So maybe that's what did it. Maybe that's what works. Because even when Sean Payton was with the Saints, that was my speculation about Jameis Winston. Because he had had that terrible season with the Bucks, and then he went to the Saints, and it was like he was a whole new quarterback. Now he got LASIK, which, if you can actually see, that's beneficial if you're a quarterback. So there was that. But just the way he commanded the offense was unlike anything we'd seen from him before. And then when Peyton retired, I was like, I feel like that's going to be bad for Winston because just something tells me that it was something about the way Peyton handled him that made him step his game up as a quarterback. And lo and behold, Sean Payton left, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Jameis Winston sucks again. So yeah, oh, I'm getting an earful today. Yeah, that those are gonna be some fun meetings. They're gonna have a good old time watching that film. Luckily, though, they did kind of start to get it together, so it's like they redeemed themselves a little bit. But the beginning of that game, boy, I was just like, I don't know, if this is a good idea. But at the same time, it's like if that's how your starters look, like what do the second string players look like? So I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Um, but yeah, I don't think anybody got hurt. I didn't hear about any serious injuries like Russell Wilson. He'll be all right, and we'll see how the season goes for them. So yeah, there's that. So as for the Cowboys, I feel like there's a lot to watch for today. Some of the obvious things people want to see what our running backs are going to look like. People want to see what our receivers are going to look like. Um, I definitely want to see that, but I kind of just want to see like, okay, how do things? What's the word? I wanted to say how do things flow, but that's not really the word I'm looking for. I don't know. On one hand, I kind of want to see like, okay, what does the offense look like in terms of communication, in terms of the types of plays they run. But at the same time, I'm almost like I don't. I have a feeling we're not gonna see anything like what they plan to execute in the regular season. I feel like we're gonna see a version of the offense, but it won't be what we should truly expect once week one rolls around. If for no other reason than the fact that like Cooper Rush is just a tick slower than Dak when it comes to getting the ball out, and also that combined with the questionable O line, I'm just like, yeah, there might be some things that they just decide to like keep in their back pocket for now. It's going to be basic. That's a really good word for it. It is going to be basic. Even Nosey, Patrick Nosey Walker said he was like, don't watch these games for wins or losses. Watch it for individual performance. Speaking of, Martin says he wants to see Simi. I want to see Simi too. So I put out an article this morning about why Simi deserves a roster spot with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, that wasn't me saying he'll definitely get one. I hope he does, and I think he should, but I don't make those decisions. So I have no control over that. But I listed a few reasons why I think he should. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think his skill set lends itself to more like, real time situations. um, I feel like he has a lot of skills that either we won't see during preseason because of the fact that there might just be some things that they don't want to show us yet. And I also think that in when it comes to actual games, his instincts kick in a little bit better. We've seen him in situations where it looks like he has more strengths than other receivers. So he's the biggest receiver in the room, that's for sure. So when it comes to those short routes, intermediate routes, he just seems to be better at being combative whenever, you know, let's see, words, words. I don't know. Just read the article. I stated it well there. But yeah, his size and physicality really work to his advantage. And so whenever it comes to situations where the ball has to come out quick, he just seems to handle those situations a lot better in my opinion. Because some people are like, okay, well, he doesn't get separation very well. But there's a lot of situations where it's like he doesn't need to because he's literally just able to overpower the defender and put himself in position to catch the ball, and then he gets the first down or he gets a touchdown and it works. And I'm not saying that that's ideal from a receiver, but in terms of what we would expect from someone of his size, of his stature, who's like the wide receiver 5 or 6, I feel like that's pretty solid. He's physical at the point of attack. Thanks, Vach. Vach is good at this. He has experience. I'm still learning how to speak football. And also my allergies are fucking me up. They're basing off 3 clips. There's a lot more than 3 clips out there is a funny part. But one thing I wrote in the article, I said the post of Simi's drops are getting 4 to 10 times more engagement than posts of like his catches or touchdowns or good plays. And I didn't make like a whole spreadsheet, but I said that based off of like basically bookmarking a bunch of his clips and putting them in 2 separate folders and just looking at the ones where he has drops. Like there are clips where Simi has gotten like touchdowns, first downs, just gone over dudes' heads, making grabs, and literally no comments. A few likes, a few retweets, no comments, whatever. But then there'll be a clip where he drops a ball, or worse yet, Gallimore takes a ball away from him. Gallimore, of all people, and people are like, "Oh, he's trash. Oh, get rid of him, cut him." Just so many comments, so many retweets. It's almost like there's a segment of Cowboys fans and or football fans who they've just made it a hobby to talk shit about Semi Fehoko. Like it makes zero sense whatsoever. So it's like the good clips come out and they're just like, I'm gonna keep scrolling. The bad ones come out and they're like, oh, I gotta share this. I gotta quote tweet this. I gotta talk about this. It makes no sense. So yeah, in a sense, they are passing that judgment off 3 clips, but there's so many, much more than 3 clips out there. There's so many more. Um, so yeah, I don't know what it is with people because I feel like if you root for a team, you should also root for the players to do well. Like you shouldn't like have fun at the expense of Simeon Fajoko struggling at camp, especially considering the fact that he's still getting reps with the ones, so it's not even like the team has given any indication that like, oh, we're sick of this dude. Like he's still getting passes from Dak Prescott. He's still getting reps with the ones, which says, okay, the team still seems to want to use him in some capacity. So you would just think as a fan that you would say like, hey, I might not, be the biggest fan of this player. There might be other receivers I like more, but if he's out there getting touchdowns, if he's out there, putting himself in a position that helps the quarterback, good for him. At least even if I don't think he's one of the best people on this roster, at least he's useful. At least, where they're putting him is showing there's an advantage to that. But it's just like they really want this dude to fail. And I'm like, that makes zero sense. It's almost as bad as the people who want Dak to fail. Obviously, it's not the same situation. Like Dak failing has a much worse consequence than Simi Fehoko failing, but it's like the same idea where it's like, okay, if you're a fan of this team, why would you want to see anybody on the team fail or do bad? Just because for some reason you don't know these people, but for some reason you've decided that you don't like them. It's super super weird. Nick said Simi probably going to be putting on a rehearsal for getting picked up off waivers. To be honest, I hate to say it. I disagree, but I do think if it comes to that, he'll get picked up. And I think if he goes to another team, he'll do really well. Um, Rooting for him as a player, but just don't want to see him on the team. He can still have success. Our fast and Noah Brown with better blocking, and that's a big thing, and that was the biggest thing that stood out to me because I'm just like, we've got questions on the O line, And then you've got people like Schoonmaker, who's like, okay, he's healthy now, but it sounds like this issue with his plantar fasciitis is reoccurring, like it's gonna reoccur. And so I'm like, I just feel like the last thing that you want to do is like get rid of someone else who could help with blocking responsibilities. Is if there was someone else in the receiver room with his size and his level of physicality, I might feel differently. But I'm just like, no, he brings a unique set of skills to the table, and I think those skills will prove to be useful as the season goes on. So I don't know. I guess he's got a lot to prove to a lot of people. Um, the people who don't want him on the team, I'll be honest, I don't really get it. Like I get like, yeah, we have a lot of other good receivers, and I'm not saying he should be like wide receiver three or anything, but I'm just like outside of the few missteps in training camp, like I'm just like, what is people's issue with Simi Fehoko? Um, they should redshirt Schoon, and if so, then yes, keep Simi. I don't think it has to be either or, but I am concerned about Schoonmaker only because I've seen situations with plantar fasciitis get really bad, and so I don't know if they figured out a way to treat it, and he really is improving, or if he just found a way to push through it, or what. But I have seen people with plantar fasciitis keep pushing it to the point where they start to tear the muscle, or they end up changing their mechanics so that they're not in pain, and it leads to other imbalances or compensations, which leads to injury. So whatever's going on with him, I would just really, I just feel like at this point, like you're a Dallas Cowboy, you have access to all the resources you need to figure out how to solve this problem. So please just figure it out, get healthy, don't get to the middle of the season, or worse yet, to the end of the season when we're about to go into the playoffs and then be like, oh shit, my foot's fucked up and now I'm gonna need several weeks off. Travis Etienne had the same deal his rookie year and he sat out. Yeah, I don't know anything about that person's situation, but like it could be the same. Sometimes people think the situations are the same and it's really not. Um, so it's like when we talk about things like plantar fasciitis, or even what is it that Mozzie is dealing with in his knee? Is it tendonitis that Mozzie had? It was something like that. Something that's like inflammation that can reoccur, and it happens with overuse of a joint. I think it was tendonitis. What the fuck? Um, yeah, tendonitis. So yeah, with injuries like that, it's just like even if they sound the same, like you just never know. That's why they had to have an MRI done on Mozzie, because it's like you have to look at things like, um, is there thickening of the tendon, because that could potentially lead to injury. Have we, have the muscles already started tearing? Like, is the inflammation doing any damage? Yeah, it's probably at least similar, if not the same. So yeah, I'll look into that one. That sounds interesting. But yeah, it is something that if he hasn't figured out precisely how to treat it, I don't know if he has to sit out, but it's better to figure out what he needs to do sooner rather than later. Yes, Martin, exactly. You got to get ahead of it. Something like that you 100% want to get ahead of, because one thing you don't want, in addition to the possibility of ending up having to sit out at the end of the season, is like you don't want to end up like really hurting that foot, which is something that could 100% happen. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, it's inflammation. It's like, well, that inflammation can lead to muscle tears and damage to like really important tissues. So, yes, in the beginning, it's just inflammation. And even when it starts to hurt really bad, it could be just inflammation, but it can like grow to something way worse than that. Let's see. I think we're expecting Deuce Vaughn to play at running back today, right? So I'm excited about seeing that. I won't say that I have any particular expectations for it. I'm just excited to see it. I'm just like, one of the things that I love about preseason is that like you don't know what to expect. There's really no pressure to like make predictions or anything like that. So I'm just like, yeah, that's somebody I'm excited to see. Um, so yeah, I want to see the young guys. I'm wondering how much time the UDFAs will get. because I'm really curious about whether or not we'll see anything from Isaiah Land at all. I feel like that's a name that I haven't heard very much. Definitely haven't heard it as much as I thought I would. Because it seemed like right after the draft, we heard that name a lot. The Cowboys did some features on him, which gave me the impression it's like, okay, he's going to be more important than people think. But I haven't heard that name very much. Tendonitis you can't get rid of. Oh yeah, that's for sure. It's just gonna keep coming back even after the rest. It will be with him the rest of his life. I have it in my elbows. If I do dumbbell curls, it comes out bad. Yeah, tendonitis is one of those things that doesn't ever completely go away. You just gotta kind of make sure you monitor it and treat it and hope for the best. Uh, Cable curls help with that, really? I didn't know that. Martin said second half most likely. If we see Isaiah Land, that would be cool. I'll take that. I just I'm just curious what he's looking like these days. I didn't pay as much attention to him at camp, and I haven't heard very much about him. So I'm just really curious. Like it seemed like there was like a lot of buzz, and then it just kind of died down. Same with Lepke. I feel like people were talking about Lepke like a lot, and then it was just kind of like, we don't have much else to say. Yeah, that's interesting, Nick. I didn't realize that cable curls versus like dumbbell curls had different impacts on like tendonitis acting up. So interesting. I learned something new today. Okay, what else, guys? We're going on an hour. Um, I'm okay with ending it there if there's nothing else, because we're gonna be right back on Tuesday. So in a few days we'll be back, and I'll be with Elena. Cable curls keeps a constant tension on the biceps and less stress on the joints. That makes sense. That does make sense. Cool. Thank you. I don't do a lot with cables at all. Um, I think because of my sport, I was like when I first started like really getting into weightlifting, I was encouraged to use free weights just for the sake of making sure that I was incorporating my core a lot when I lifted, and making sure that like the machines weren't compensating for any sort of like balance issues or anything like that. So it just kind of became a habit for me to like always use free weights. And so even now that I have an access to a gym that, has plenty of cable machines, I just don't use it. And I haven't done a lot with them. Yeah, the game is at 4 p.m. Yeah, so kind of tonight, early evening ish. 4 p.m. Central Time. I'm not sure where people are watching from. So yeah, coming on in a few hours actually. Dang, it's almost lunchtime. This is what happens when you get a late start in the day. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for right now. If you haven't yet, definitely check out the Semifoco article. Um, I'm able to write ideas a lot better than I can say them. I always talk about how me talking about football is like learning a new language. So it's like if you've ever had to learn a new language like Spanish, like when you can take time and write out words and like go back and correct things and be like, what was the word for that again? What you have to say will come out a lot better and a lot smoother than if somebody sits down in front of you and is like, have a conversation with me right now. Um, so that's kind of where I am right now. Concepts I got, but when it comes to like, okay, how am I going to explain this concept to people who might, be reading what I'm writing? It comes out a lot better written than it does when I'm like, okay, let me sit in front of a camera, much less with no show notes, and just talk about this. I gotta get going. Gotta get a haircut at 11:30. Okay, have fun, Nick. We're gonna get out of here. So yeah, anything I wanted to talk about on Tuesday, just DM it, email it, leave it in the comments, whatever. But yeah, see y'all on Twitter while we're all watching the game. Feel free to at me and engage with my tweets. And until Tuesday, that's it from Bitches Love Sports. I'm Bitch 2, and I'm out.